a sheriff's group, which is also known as the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. The Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association is gaining acceptance around the country as they've held some trainings, some rallies, and speeches, sheriffs, and meetings in 30 states. Their acronym CSPOA was founded in 2011 by Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack. And the group teaches things like this: that elected sheriffs must, quote, protect their citizens from the overreach of an out of control federal government. And they do this by refusing to enforce any law that they deem unconstitutional or unjust, just in their minds. So again, Sheriff Richard Mack, who founded this whole thing, said that they go about this by achieving this goal. He says the safest way to actually achieve that is to have local law enforcement understand that they have no obligation to enforce such laws. They're not laws they're not laws at all anyway. If they're unjust laws, they're the laws of tyranny. Here's some of those tyrannical things that they're against. They've railed against COVID-19 mask mandates, against gun control laws. And also they've talked about this stolen election and election fraud, because those are things that sheriffs should be concerned with, and saying how things are unconstitutional based off their own thoughts. Well, based off of some of their own thoughts, we already don't trust anything else that they may be thinking, because they buy into BS. I was really close to saying the word. CSPOA also spread its ideology across the country. Yeah, they're trying to find different ways to make other idiotic sheriffs think the same way. So the group has held formal trainings on its constitutional curriculum for law enforcement officers in at least 13 of those 30 states. And in 6 states, the training was approved for officers' continuing education credits. The group also has supporters who sit on 3 state boards in charge of law enforcement training standards. They've dug their way in. They're trying to implement these types of thought processes and these trainings so that this is just the new norm. Law enforcement outside of the reach of the Constitution just because they think so. So experts have also spoken out about how the group's training, and Mary McCord, who's a former federal prosecutor and executive director of the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection at Georgetown, has said this: they have no authority, not under their state constitutions or implementing statutes, to decide what's constitutional and what's not constitutional. That's what courts had the authority to do, not sheriffs. One more part. There's another sort of evil lurking here, because CSPOA is now essentially part of a broader movement in the US to think it's okay to use political violence if we disagree with some sort of government policy. Again, Ida, this sounds like it's lining up very directly with what many conservatives, violent, radical conservatives, and MAGA conservatives think is norm. Let the cops just do whatever they want based off of the same belief systems that many of them have. So the thought is, we'll just let them run rampant, and because they believe what I believe, it'll be just fine. But if anyone else says, these things are unconstitutional, or let's challenge these things, let's adjudicate these things, let's try to iron these things out, it's, look at these rabid libs trying to take over your country and tell you what to do, when we see it in broad daylight here.
I mean, if you are a black or brown person, you already feel like they do whatever they want to do. Like they don't follow the rules. Like that is the normal, in writing my book, when I had to go back to my childhood, I would freeze when cops would come around. It wasn't like I was like, I'm safe. And to be honest, because I've encountered some good police officers that have been, who have cared about my well-being, but the general feeling has always been unsafe. So now other people are starting to feel what has been very prevalent in our communities, and feeling unsafe when law enforcement, because of social media and the news, that you're seeing that white people are being unjustly killed by the police, that mentally ill people are getting unjustly killed by the police. But that's been standard in our communities. So to hear that this is happening is no surprise to us, because a lot of police officers who we've encountered always have felt like they're above the law. They don't, we've lost order. I can't hear you. You're
That's
mute.
a damn shame. Michael, this is your fault, bro. This is your fault. You jinxed me. No, when we've got these folks talking about this going all across the country, and they're used to having, to lean on certain elements of our society, then that's okay. But eventually that gets tiring. You're like, we need more. We need a little bit. Like anytime people have this kind of power and they feel like they can detach from normal constitutional norms, then they go, well, I need a little bit more. This power hungry is one of those things that just doesn't really get fed enough, and they find new ways to do it. And now when more folks get wrapped up in it, maybe that's when they start realizing it. But at that point, it might be a little bit late. I want to go to this last chart, you guys, before we go out of this breakthrough, because there was this Marshall Project, and they surveyed sheriffs. This is in 2021. They surveyed sheriffs, and they found that nearly half of respondents agreed with this ridiculous ideology. So if you guys can't see it clearly, that first question is, how much do you agree or disagree with these following statements? The first one was, the sheriff's authority supersedes the federal or state government in my county. Strongly agree and agreeing lines, those two first gold ones are 26, almost 27%, and the next one 22%. Yeah, that's the majority of everyone of all of these after they're both added together. The second was, I'm willing to interpose on behalf of county residents when I believe a state or federal law is unjust. When I believe just some random a-hole who's a sheriff or is part of this law enforcement is like, I believe that. Strongly agree and agreeing is at 31% and 40%. It's the thought process for the folks who want it. And if you hand them this kind of power, I wonder what they'll do with it. They already feel like they have it already. Back the blue, at least until they come after Donald Trump. Then no more backing is happening.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.